Why I don't think people go to hell, part 4. Hi, my name's Josh. I was a conservative evangelical pastor for 8 years, recently got out of that, and people ask me, what do you think about hell now? In the last video, I talked about the teachings of Jesus and how they're inherently contradictory. In this video, let's do a little bit more work on the teachings of Jesus. In this one, let's talk about how in most of the teachings of Jesus, when he talks about hell, he's using hyperbole or parable, and therefore we really can't draw sure conclusions from it. By far, one of the most popular teachings of Jesus on hell is this parable from Luke chapter 16 of the rich man and Lazarus. Here he says that the rich man died and went to hell in Hades, quote, verse 23, being tormented. He lifted his eyes up and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. This verse is used to show that hell is clearly a place of torment. But can we really draw sure conclusions from this parable on hell? Especially because in passages like this one from Matthew 13, Jesus says that when he tells parables, he does so to be intentionally confusing. Pause to read. The point of the parable in Luke 16 is that the law and the prophets is sufficient to give you knowledge of God, not to create a systematic theology of hell. Now, in many other instances where Jesus is talking about hell, it is obviously hyperbolic. Passages like this one from Mark chapter 9 where he says, "And if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled than with 2 hands go to hell for the unquenchable fire." Now, if you're a literalist, meaning you want to take the Bible literally and you want to draw conclusions from this kind of teaching on hell, then what you also have to believe is that if your hand causes you to sin, then you got to cut it off. Equally problematic for those who want to interpret this literally is when he says, "It is better for you to enter life crippled." Enter life. He's speaking to people who are clearly alive, and so what he has to mean there is enter eternal life, enter heaven crippled. Most conservative theologians believe that when we enter the next life, we get a new body. And so this verse, if you want to take it literally, it presents so many problems. So why does all this matter? It matters because if you want to use the words of Jesus to prove eternal conscious torment, you have a lot of issues. It's very difficult to draw conclusions systematically from the teachings of Jesus on hell. And it'd be a better practice for interpretation to just say, we have no idea what Jesus is talking about there. Now, couple this with the fact that Jesus, when he's talking about hell, most of the time uses the word Gehenna. Gehenna comes from the Hebrew Gehinnom, meaning the valley of Hinnom outside of Jerusalem. This valley wasn't ever a ever-burning trash pit outside of Jerusalem, as you may have been told growing up in Christianity. No, it's just a symbolic place for where evil dwelled. And this word is only used when talking to Jewish audiences in the New Testament, meaning that Jesus is borrowing a concept from Jewish literature to help explain his point. He's not trying to give us a systematic understanding of what hell is. So what does Jesus teach about hell? We have no idea. Lastly, I see a lot of people tagging Dan McClellan in my comment section. I love Dan McClellan. I got most of this information from him. And so if you just search Dan McClellan hell or Gehenna, you'll be able to see his thoughts on this.